Hello, hello. I
Humming
guess this is
along.
on. The lip sync is kind of off too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
We're gonna figure it out
Welcome
every day. Something new we have to
to
figure out.
day 7 of the 29 questions for an ordinary life. Of the ordinary life?
For the ordinary.
For the ordinary life. I guess, I don't know. I still just don't really like that title. 29 questions for the ordinary life. Today is day 7. Today's chapter is what would I do if I were not fearful?
Go ahead, eat the apple.
Go ahead and eat the apple. Is that the name of the chapter?
Yep.
We're Kate and Tanner. And
Hi.
if you are joining us, we'd love to know if you can see and hear us and what you're up to, where you're tuning in from. Would love to hear from you. So what would I do if I were not fearful?
Yeah.
You want to go?
I almost feel like, I would do anything.
But what is anything?
Well, anything. I mean, I'm fearful to go bungee jumping. I guess I would do that, or fly out of an airplane, jump out of an airplane.
What's the one thing?
What's the one thing that I'm the most fearful of?
That you think fear is holding you back from?
What's the one thing that I think fear
that we can discuss publicly?
I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, if you don't know how to answer it, how is anybody else going to know how to answer it?
That's why we're talking about it. I mean,
drop a comment, help us out. We need a lifeline here, please. Somebody comment. What would you do? What is the one thing that you would do if you were not fearful? Please help us here.
Here's the thing. What I feel like I would live in my true potentiality. Like just what I am designed to do. What am I doing here? I mean, we all kind of look for purpose in life, right? This is an ongoing topic for so many, from celebrities to ordinary, everyday people, the doctors, the nurses, the moms, the dads. Like there's so many people who just like, what am I doing here? Right? What am I doing here? So we all have a purpose. There is a purpose for why we are here. And that looks differently for everyone. And I think if we were to fully live a fearless life, we would be living in our true purpose.
So are you suggesting that because there's so much fear that's already been installed, it's hard to unravel what exactly that would even look like?
I mean, to some extent, sure. Right. I mean, it's so deep, and it starts at such an early age. Like, I love the example here in the first paragraph where he says how he has this conversation with his grandmother about something, said that he was, something that he was fearful about. And she stopped and asked him this question: what tense in the English language is fear? Think about that. What tense is it? And so he thought about it and he said, present, because I feel it now, which I think a lot of people would answer that way. I've actually even never thought to ask that kind of question.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so then she responds and says, it's futuristic. You're making it up. Stop it.
Stop it.
Stop it. I feel like that's like an SNL.
No, actually, is it SNL? There, do you know the thing that
stop it,
where the woman's like terrified of yeah.
Just stop it. I think that anyway.
That's funny.
But yeah, it is futuristic, because if you think about anything that we really are fearful of, it is because of what we're projecting out for that outcome.
Unless somebody like has a gun to your head, or the lion is chasing you, or whatever.
Yeah,
right? Like there are situations where it's like, that's fear, but then you're you're in action about it, right? You're not thinking about fear, you're reacting to a situation.
And he talks about how there's a healthy fear. Healthy fear can drive you to do things. So obviously, if you have a life-death situation like that, where you know, there is an animal chasing you, or there is a, you know, an intruder in your home, there is a genuine reason to be fearful right there, and you're going to do what's necessary to protect yourself. But for the most part, when we're thinking about fear, it's creating this inaction in our life because of what we project to happen that usually isn't the way it's going to play out anyway. So we're coming up with an outcome that isn't necessarily going to be how it's going to come out.
Yeah, and hopefully you've had enough experiences of this in your own life that you can at least look at it and say, yeah, like that's true, right? I mean, I know I have, that it's like, you know, some of the probably worst things or most impactful things that have happened, I didn't fear, I didn't think about, because I didn't see them coming. And most of the things that I, you know, thought about and had fear about didn't actually end up coming to pass, or certainly not. The situation didn't play out as I had created it in my mind. And you know, so there's a couple of things in here. Right. It's amazing to me how we never stop and look at our belief system behind fears. And I think, you know, we talked about this yesterday, in that the simple fact, or the simple whatever approach of having awareness, and to just stop and think about your thoughts. Why am I thinking this thought? Why am I fearful about this? Why am I worked up about this? And he talks about this example. You know, it's no secret that public speaking is like the number one fear of the general population. And there's the joke that, you know, most people would rather be in the casket at the funeral than giving the eulogy, right? Like, people actually fear speaking more than they fear death itself, at least,
Which is
whatever,
crazy
based
to
on
me.
survey results, right?
Yeah.
But that's true. And, you know, I know a lot of people. I mean, you've got a 20-year career in radio, so you're used to speaking and being on stages and doing that sort of stuff. I'm not so much, right? This is a learned skill, much like everything I've talked about. It's a learned behavior, learned skill. And I still get fearful. Like, I need to make a video for this Rise Up World group that we're in. And I'm like, oh, I would have done it by now, but I'd like, oh, what am I going to say? And I only have 2 minutes, and like all this stuff, right? Am I going to say the right words in those 2 minutes? And the reality is that there's not the right words.
I was gonna
It's
say, what's the
literally
right
just
words?
a matter.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Right.
like you said, I mean, it's the programming in my head of judging myself, of how other people are going to judge me or perceive me or whatever.
I mean, quite frankly, this is why we do therapy every week, because we work through all that stuff. Where is it coming from? Where that deep rootedness? And again, we are such advocates of therapy. We do EMDR because we know that there are behaviors that we have and beliefs that we have that were just instilled in such an early age that, like, we didn't have control over it at that point. You know, we're children, and you're just a product of that environment. And we know that we want to do things differently, or as you're playing with the lighting, but we want to be able to live our lives in a manner that any of those past things that might be holding us back, we want to get rid of. So that's, hence.
And to be clear, we do EMDR because we went to a therapist that we connected with. She suggested EMDR
free at a library, and we liked her.
She suggested we do EMDR, and then we started doing EMDR, and then we saw the benefits and the actual results and effects of doing EMDR. And so in like a certain particular area of life, and now we're, a year after we've been going to her for a year.
We've only been doing EMDR now. We've had like 5 sessions, something like that.
Well, I mean, you started with,
that's true.
The first 6 months of therapy was about parenting strategies.
Yeah.
And the last 6 months have been about us unfucking ourselves. So through the use of EMDR.
Yeah, and I used it. That's right, for last year for going into David's birth, to be able to let go of Charlotte's birth and be in a good place for his birth. Anyway,
And I think real quick, I think
Yeah.
the what is it, the acronym, right? If you use FEAR as an acronym, which is false evidence appearing real, or face
love
everything
that.
and rise,
Papa
which
Roach.
whatever. Both of those are applicable because it is false evidence appearing real. And you can just face whatever's in front of you and rise. And I think the thing that's really apropos about what's mentioned in this book and the current situation that we have right now is, what does he say? Most people stay in jobs they hate because they fear change.
Yep.
And that's a shitty situation. And it's understandable, but it's also super important to understand that if you are in a job, and I know right now people are extremely grateful for any work and income that they have, but if you are in a job that you dislike, that's a really not a good reason to stay there. Is that you fear change, you fear getting a job with a similar income. And quite frankly, for me, when I was in a job that I didn't like, and I started thinking about looking for another job, then I started weighing the benefits that I had, all the things that I actually enjoyed, or maybe a better way would say that I took advantage of by being in this job. And I had to think about, okay, I need to be able to replace all of these things in a new job and more, right? I need it to be close to where I work. I need to meet a certain salary. I need a relatively relaxed, open environment, like all of these things. And for me, once I started to do that, I was like, oh, this actually isn't so bad for me right now in my time of life. And with the current situation, he talks about, because there are so many people that are experiencing furloughs or layoffs and impacts to their employment. And he talks about the fact that a friend of his didn't like his job, was fearful
for 15 years. Yep.
Was fearful about looking for a new job or finding a new job, and so was literally just locked in fear in this job that he didn't like. And then the day came that he got laid off, and then he was afraid about looking for a new job, and so he asked his friend, what would you do? What would you do if you didn't have to work for money, basically? And what the guy said, carpentry.
He said, what would you choose to do if you weren't afraid of not getting a job? Because that's where he was hung up. And he said carpentry. And you know what? Now that's what he does for work.
And he makes more money than he ever did before in this job that he was afraid to leave.
Right.
And I that's not the only time that I've heard of that situation happening, right? That's oftentimes, if you can get detached from the situation that you're in and you're fearful of leaving, the opportunities and the universe will open up to you, and the universe is conspiring for your highest and best.
Yeah. And especially now with so many people who are laid off or furloughed, or however it's playing out for you right now. This is the opportunity that you're like, okay, this is real. This is a scary time. It's challenging. You can have all these things of like, I don't know, right? I don't know, this uncertainty, but how am I going to look at this uncertainty as a blessing and say, what can now I have a blank canvas. I have a blank canvas to do something that I have wanted to do, but have been fearful to do it, or didn't have the time to do it, or didn't know how to execute it. Well, now I'm forced to figure out how to execute it, right? Because many people are in this position. So look at these current circumstances as a way to say, okay, yeah, this is challenging right now, and it's scary, and whatever, sort of negative word you want to put to it that you might be feeling right now, acknowledge those emotions. Like we don't want to say hide them and discount them, acknowledge them, and then say, okay, but now I'm here. what am I going to do about it? Right.
Yeah.
And find the things that really are going to give you more joy and excitement in your day to day, particularly under these circumstances. Right. So, and the other part, he kind of has, so this story was under sort of the heading of fear of failure, which a lot of people talk about as their sort of number one fear. And right under that too, we hear often is fear of success. And I've actually said that to myself that when talking about fear is that I have a fear of success, because in my mind, it's, when much is given, then much is, you're responsible for. And that freaks me out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to take care of more things. But he closes in here and says, every time I've overlooked my fear and gone ahead with my plan, it turned out better than I ever thought possible.
Mm.
And I think whether it's this fear of more success and responsibility, or fear of something that's just kind of keeping you stuck, know that when we take action and move towards it, start just taking small steps towards overcoming it. Because action, as our mentor says, action is your coach, right?
Let action be your coach,
right? So action will help you to work through the fear. When you can start doing that, though, like, the doors open up so much more than we could ever imagine. So wherever you're feeling that holds, know that, like, okay, but I'm going to just go back to the question, well, why am I fearful, right? Like, let's understand the beliefs behind it, work through that, but also know that, like, as you start to just take some action steps, the fear is going to go away. And you're going to start to just embrace the journey of it all and be like, but look what I'm doing. Look what I'm accomplishing. Look what's happening. Like, and we go back, I don't know what day it was in this, one of these chapters that we've been reviewing is, don't let, because there's a hiccup in your action steps, be like, oh, well, now I'm going to throw my hands up, like, let that be the lesson for you to keep going, keep figuring it out.
I mean, I have to say, just setting up, this little setup here that we've been using, I've thought about this. I've known, like, had the equipment list and, all of this stuff for a while, we'll say. And
at least a year we've been.
Well, but not the equipment list. That was part of the thing of, like, well, what do I do? And blah, blah, what do we get? And what do we need? And what do we don't need? But yes, either way, sure. Probably for a year, we've been talking about the fact that we could make better use of this room that we're in right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that we could, do some things that we want to do to have a place to come and create content and do exactly what we're doing now. And it's fear. It's new, right? And what I love that one of my mentors, Steve Larson, says is that it's not hard. It's just new, right? Like, if you remember that, it's not hard. It's just new. And so often when we set out to do new things, they are unfamiliar, and so they feel hard. And some of it is quote unquote hard, but it's like, what's more painful, staying in a career or a relationship or a poor financial situation or whatever? Is that more painful than the pain of doing something new and stepping out and taking a risk and going in the direction of having, a better relationship, or, even if that means getting rid of the person that you're in a relationship with, or if that means going towards something that has more financial opportunity or something that is more fulfilling? And you just, like, people only move out of either a pain or because they have such a dream so big that they're chasing something. So most people need, quite frankly, the reason I'm excited about a time like now, and it's not that I don't have empathy, and it's not that I don't, have whatever. I'm having my own versions of grief, but a time like right now makes me excited because I know that chaos and pain will move, especially on a global scale, it's going to move a lot of people to action, right? It's going to move people in a direction that they may have otherwise not moved if everything stayed status quo and stayed comfortable. And we've had that in our own lives that we've talked about, where it's like, why don't we take massive action? Why don't we follow through on the things that we say that we want to do? And the reality is, because the pain's not great enough in most cases. And so figuring out how to, and there's fear, right? The pain's not great enough, and there's fear in front of those actions. And I don't even really know how we ended up here, but the point is that, even setting up this equipment and now doing these daily shows and our daily interviews that we're doing, like, there's still things that I'm like, what was it last night? We had the mute on, and we went live and we talked, and it was this great conversation. Then I was like, oh crap, I left the mute button on, and or whatever. We went live and we didn't realize we were live, and we were like talking about some stuff that we didn't necessarily, want to be.
How we open up our lives.
Yeah, that we didn't necessarily, it wasn't intended for the live audience. Right. So there's still things that we stumble through, but my point in all of that is that by doing this, and by doing this every day, I'm getting much more comfortable. I'm like, cool, like, this is now exciting. We come down, plug in the laptop, we do X, Y, and Z, we set it up, we're ready to go. And like every day I make some mistake, and then I just note it and go, oh, okay, like add that to the checklist, or add that to whatever, that we don't do it again tomorrow. And there's no way, this is a lesson I'm teaching myself and I'm telling myself, but hopefully somebody else can benefit. Like, there's no way that you can actually get better at something without starting, right? Like, you don't start at the finish line. You don't start at being a great speaker. You've got to stutter and stumble and sweaty palms and get terrified. I mean, I again, back to the video. I've done a bunch of videos, but I am got to do a video for this group of 30,000 people, and there's fear around it.
Well, and also think, like, you have to make mistakes in order for like, for things to sort of have that perfection that people are looking for, right? There's no such thing as perfect, but to feel like you're making progress and that it's like the way you would like it to be, you got to mess up first. They're like, oh, okay, I don't want to do that, so note to self, and then you don't do it again. And like that, and that's okay. That's part of just the process of learning how to do something. And at the end of the day, just remember, God, the universe, whatever, like, it's on your side. God's on your side for you to win. So just know that, like, if you are ready to take a step towards being a better you in whatever area of your life, like, the universe is going to give you the options for you to continue to do that. And sometimes there are going to be some uphill battles to make you stronger. Don't think that that's what's going to, that's there to push you down. It's for you to go fight and climb so that you are going to be better than you were before in whatever area that you're working on. The universe wants you to win. God wants you to win. So sometimes, we look at these challenges in the day and the trials and even tragedy, right? A tragedy that happens. It's all a way to get better, to grow stronger, to become more than what you were yesterday. And God always wants you to win. So you've got that on your side 100% all the time.
That's right.
So,
okay. So the question is, what
would I do if I wasn't fearful?
If I were not fearful?
Not fearful.
So what would you do if you were not fearful? Love to know in the comments. Shout out to Pamela for tuning in. Thanks to Mark Briggs for the like there.
Yeah.
And I think Pamela commented when we were talking about fear of success. So we can talk to Pamela about that and support her on that journey offline.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.